Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome to the final entry of this year's Scooby-Doo Retrospectives. And for today's film, we'll be seeing Mystery Inc. and Co. traveling to cyberspace as we take a look at Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase. Now, this is the film that I've actually seen the most often when I was a kid, as it was one of the few animated Scooby-Doo films from the late 90s, early 2000s that I actually wound up owning on VHS. And I kind of loved and I kind of wanted to see this film a lot because there was something that occurred in it. And as a result, I just had to have it as part of my film collection at the time, and I wound up watching it to hell and back when I was younger. Now that I'm older, I can kind of see I can kind of see the film without the nostalgia goggles a little bit. And from what I've heard, apparently out of all four Scooby-Doo films from the late 90s, early 2000s, this one's considered the least remembered, or at the very least the one that people typically don't go back to as much. And I'd be lying if I didn't understand why, but I still do think the film holds some value to it. How so? Well, first let's get to our long-ass plot summary, and in this case, what's going on in this film is that Mystery Inc. is going to a university. Which one? Doesn't really matter. It's a state university that's pretty much just filled with all the typical college trappings. Students, people studying on the shade, lovers walking hand in hand, just basically all the things you would expect at a typical college campus. And the reason why Mystery Inc. is going there is because they're there to see an old friend, a guy by the name of Eric who is studying there. And part of the reason why they're going at all is because as part of one of Eric's projects, he's actually made a video game based off of Mystery Inc., actually called Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase. And basically the whole point of the game is just to, explore through 10 levels, and in order to progress to the next level, you have to find a box of Scooby snacks. Get through all 10 levels, you beat the game. So, of course, Mystery Inc. is a little excited, and they want to go see him. Although upon arriving, they do end up encountering some turbulence, as when they walk on campus, the chief of security, a man by the name of Officer Wimbley, ends up stopping them, thinks that they're a bunch of punks, but when Fred shows that they actually do have an appointment to meet with Eric, he does let them go, though he says he's going to keep his eye on them, which he does as he continues to stalk them throughout the campus. But either way, Mystery Inc. manages to meet up with Eric in the lab that he's studying in, and from there they end up meeting a couple of his colleagues. His professor, a man by the name of Professor Kaufman, who bears an uncanny resemblance to Albert Einstein, and his fellow student Bill, who actually also made a rival game to Eric's, although his is basically focusing on baseball and that sort of thing. But put simply, the rest, they're all pretty much happy that Mystery Inc. is here. Mostly because they got a mystery on their hands. For you see, the night prior to Mystery Inc. arriving, they encountered a monster, specifically a phantom virus. Basically, what had happened was that the previous night, while everyone was working late in the lab, they encountered something strange in their computer systems that wound up breaking out into reality and attacked the group. And how it was able to get out was via a device that Eric, Kaufman, and Bill had created. Basically, a laser that has the power to transform physical matter into digital matter that can be stored in cyberspace. And well, somehow, someway, this virus wound up appearing in Eric's game, as that was the place that they were using to store all these digital things that are in cyberspace, and managed to escape into the real world. And considering that it is a physical manifestation of a virus, it's a problem. It very much is a problem, as it can screw with technology, steal data, and even manage to control them. As when Eric tried calling campus security to get rid of the virus, he wound up bringing the phone to life, and the wires inside wound up attacking Eric, so much so that his arm is now in stitches as a direct consequence. However, the only reason the virus didn't end up killing everybody is that as Kaufman was trying to find things to throw at the virus, he wound up grabbing a super magnet, something they apparently have around the lab. And because the virus is made of electromagnetic particles, the magnetic field wound up screwing with it enough that it essentially had to run away in order to preserve itself. Unfortunately, after that incident, no one has seen the virus since, though Professor Kaufman suspects that it might still be on campus, which is where Mystery Inc. comes in, as he wants them to investigate the campus and, if possible, bring the virus, corral the virus back to the lab so they can beam it back into cyberspace. And in order to do that, he equips the gang each with their own super magnets. As such, the gang happily accepts this caper and decides to go hunting for them, though I'm kind of have my own thoughts on the laser, which I'll get to when I finish my thoughts on this film. But either way, But either way, as they go out and explore, the gang end up splitting up, with Scooby and Shaggy going to the cafeteria to look for the virus, or aka actually just going there to get as much food down their gullet as they can, while Fred, Velma, and Daphne go to the basement, which also leads to a little funny gag, as when Fred proposes that they all split up, Scooby and Shaggy just start walking off, and Fred's like, hey, I didn't say how we were going to split up, and Shaggy's like, well, do we do it any other way? As such, while Scooby and Shaggy are busily just enjoying themselves with a hearty meal, Fred, Velma, and Daphne end up continuing to investigate the basement, and well, they end up encountering the Phantom Virus, which does try to attack them, but thankfully Velma, who put down her magnet to examine an old book, what the hell? I already screwed it up. Point is, Velma had put her magnet down earlier to examine an old book, and the virus, when getting closer to the gang, accidentally stepped on it, which did cause it to repel enough so that it had to run away. And funny little detail, it's limping on the leg that it stepped on the magnet with. As such, the trio end up trying to chase after the virus, but as they run throughout the basement, they end up running into Officer Wembley, who does not like the fact that these three are running around the basement. They try to explain we were actually chasing the virus, but even he's dubious of that, as while he was told about the Phantom Virus by Professor Kaufman and Bill and Eric, he thinks that the whole thing is just a college prank and doesn't really believe it at all. As such, he just tells the gang that they're going back to the lab and they're going to stay there until Professor Kaufman gets back. So essentially, Fred, Velma, and Daphne get neutered in their investigation. Meanwhile, Scooby and Shaggy haven't finished off their hearty meal to the point where the cafeteria has run out of food, but as they're just kind of lazing around hoping for even more food, the virus ends up coming into the cafeteria and attacks them. Of course, the pair run for it and end up tricking the virus into getting shocked, which is honestly a very funny scene. But after that, it leads to a chase scene, which also leads to this film's rendition of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?, as the virus chases Scooby and Shaggy around the campus, and it's a fine version. There are better ones in the previous three movies, but it's entertaining, which as it has a little bit of a techno beat to it, and with one of the singers even shouting some of his lines, it fits well with the whole cyber feel of the movie. So I dig it. It's fine. However, as Scooby and Shaggy are continued being chased around the campus, they eventually end up getting raced back to the lab with the virus hot on their heels. As such, the rest of the gang see this and immediately give chase as well, with Wembley getting knocked out of his seat and kind of getting woozy. However, as the gang are being chased and are chasing the Phantom Virus, they end up kind of getting lost throughout the lab until they eventually all reconverge in the center of the lab, none of them having found the virus. However, unbeknownst to any of them, someone in the shadow, there's an extra person in the lab, someone in the shadows, who, once the gang is in position, he activates the laser and blasts the entirety of Mystery Inc., causing them to be sent right into the video game. And unfortunately, they can't get out. You see, after this happens, the rest of the group, basically Kaufman, Bill, Eric, and Wembley end up reassembling in the lab, and when they realize what happened to the gang, they immediately are worried. And while Wembley suggests, well, they just zap them out, because earlier in the movie we did see that apparently you can retrieve objects that have been sent into cyberspace, apparently it doesn't exactly work that way with real people, as if a real person is thrown into the video game, rather than just being a hunk of meat or an object like all the other things sent in, well, apparently you gotta just play through the game. Essentially, if you want to escape, if you're a real person and you're beamed into the video game, I'm guessing you're registered as a player character. And so as a result, if you want to escape the game, you need to finish it, and that's literally the only way out of the game. I find that to be a stupid design flaw in your thing, because that essentially means that you have doomed these people to being potentially trapped in that game forever if they have no idea how to complete it. And you want to know what makes it better? As long as you're in cyberspace, things can actually hurt you. Yeah, I can see why the laser is not exactly up for a grant yet. My point is this, Mystery Inc. is trapped in the video game, and the only way they can escape is if they complete the game, which is easier said than done, because it turns out that at some point the Phantom Virus got blasted into the game as well, either before Mystery Inc. got blasted in, or after, as it could have been a period of time when the Phantom Virus may have been alone with whoever actually blasted the gang, but either way, it's in the game as well, and since it's a virus, it most likely ends up screwing with its settings so that it potentially registers as a player and an enemy. It doesn't state this in the movie, but that's kind of what I'm inferring based on what happens, because in order to progress through the game, through the game, the gang need to grab the box of Scooby snacks on each level. And since the virus is the one attacking them and is able to jump through the levels as well, I'm assuming that it had altered its data somewhat so that it was kinda sorta meant to be a part of the game. So that it registers as both player and enemy. Player, so that it can advance through the levels with the gang whenever they find a box of Scooby snacks, but also as enemy so that it can attack the gang and actually interact with each of the foes they encounter on each level. And so from there, the final two acts of the movie is just Mystery Inc. as they're progressing through the game, which again is easier said than done, because there are challenges put in each level, as, you know, it's a video game, and if it was too easy, then it wouldn't be any fun. And what's kind of funny is that every level in the game is a different setting. Like, for example, when Mystery Inc. first arrives in the game, they end up on the moon as the first level. After that, they go to a Roman Colosseum, After that, it's prehistoric jungle, and after that, just several other levels that we get a montage through, which I'll talk about later. But my point is this: there is quite a lot of variety in these levels, to the point where it makes me wonder, are you sure this is a Scooby-Doo game? Because this feels like you just threw all the random bullshit at the wall and just hoped that something would stick. But either way, yeah, the gang has to survive through all of this, which is compounded by the fact that the virus is still actively hounding them in the game. And since, it's now working alongside all the NPC baddies in the game, it now has backup for this, which the gang is initially worried about. But they also begin to wonder if this might be a blessing in disguise, because if they're in cyberspace and apparently the virus came from this game, then they might be able to find clues as to where it came from. Because after all, it's a virus. It didn't just appear in the game. Something had to have created it. Someone had to have put the virus in the game. So there might be some hints left in there about who's behind all this. But either way, that's neither here nor there, as again, the gang still have to majorly prioritize getting out of here, which of course means completing the game. Although they don't know that's the case, though I think in their case they think, oh well, if we just keep going through the game we might find clues. So I don't know. My point is this: they immediately start looking for boxes of Scooby snacks, and sure enough, in every level they do find them. On the moon level, they find it by the moon landing site. In the Colosseum level, it's in the mouth of a lion, and in the prehistoric level, it's on a volcano. Yeah, that one takes some getting used to. Yeah, that one is a little hard to find, too, because it's a vast jungle. It's clear Eric put in the extra time with this game, because there is a lot into these levels than what should be in a standard video game. So yeah, the game does get progressively harder, but basically, one way or another, they do keep finding the boxes of Scooby snacks, and sure enough, true to their words, they do end up finding more clues as to the Phantom virus's origin. As on the first level, it tells them, let's play ball, while utilizing other lingo in other levels, like when they get to the Colosseum level and it brings out these skeletal enemies, it says, let me introduce you to the home team, and then the lion saying, it's the home team's mascot, and then even in later levels, it keeps using other baseball terminology, which you should probably be able to tell who it is just by that, but I'll pretend that you don't know and move on. But point is, they keep finding the Scooby snacks through various means. Oh yeah, and then the second level, they end up finding a chalk diamond that was drawn in the Colosseum, to the point, yeah, again, you can tell something about that. But basically, after the game completes the first three levels, we end up getting a montage called they end up going through the next 5 levels, called Hello Cyber Dream, which, actually, no, the other 6 levels, which again, much like the first 3 levels, there's a lot of variety in these things. As first they're underwater, then they're in then they're shrunk down in a backyard, then they're in a desert, then they're in the desert fighting mummies, then they're in a fantasy setting fighting a dragon, to the point where they're actually just in the North Pole and fighting the Phantom virus as he's riding on a polar bear. And from there, but basically, they go through all these things, but in every level, they manage to find the box of Scooby snacks and move on to the next level, despite the Phantom virus's best efforts, until eventually, they manage to make it to the final level, which they at first believed to be home, because the final level is a cityscape, which looks enough like the real world so they would first buy it, until they look up at the sky and see there's a grid pattern briefly before it turns into a regular night sky. So yeah, they're still trapped in the video game, and sure enough, just like with all the other levels, the Phantom virus is there to mock them. As such, after their encounter with him on the 10th level, they make a run for it and try to hide in a malt shop, and upon arriving, they notice that they're not the only ones there, as there is a group of patrons there just, ordering food. So the gang immediately asks them, hey, can someone help us? Until they see who these patrons are. Themselves. Yep. You have to remember that this game is a Scooby-Doo game, and the whole reason why the gang even wanted to go see Eric was because he was basing the game around them. So put simply, this is the Mystery Inc. From the game. These are the people that you would be playing as if you were playing the game in the real world. And what I love is that the designs of the digital Mystery Inc. are essentially they're essentially the original designs from the Scooby-Doo Where Are You cartoon. For the most part. Fred, Velma, and Daphne's digital doubles have their old designs, which does lead to some fun interactions as both Velmas realize who the other is, both Daphne's criticize the other's outfit, and real Fred just compliments digital Fred's ascot, which is I find amusing. But in the case of Scooby and Shaggy, when they encounter their digital doubles designs, well, they're just recolors, which I guess makes sense because Scooby and Shaggy's designs did not change between Scooby-Doo Where Are You and these movies, but the designs they do end up using for them are actually pretty unique and different. In the case of Shaggy, they wound up utilizing the red shirt palette that he has worn in certain movies, which I'm okay with. I like red, and I thought it looked cool on Shaggy, but whereas with Scooby, they just brought out a whole new design. As well, for the most part, it still looks like regular Scooby. His spur is a little bit darker, and his collar is red. So again, you can still tell who he is. But either way, yeah, the gang ends up meeting up with their digital doubles, and after they both exchange some words, including both Shaggy's and Scooby's sharing a bite to eat, immediately the gang tries asking their digital doubles for help concerning the Phantom virus. Although the digital gang has no idea who the virus is because, well, he's not supposed to be part of the game. Though they quickly learn who he is when he immediately arrives outside the diner and starts asking for everyone to come out. As such, both gangs, realizing the immediate danger, decide they need to run for it, and Digital Fred tells them that the Mystery Machine's out and back, so they all go out through the back door and take it. Which, another funny thing, the Mystery Machine throughout all four of these movies has had like a regular van design, what you would expect when driving a real van, but the one in the digital world is the OG Mystery Machine design, which even Fred compliments because he thinks, oh, I miss this old van. But either way, yeah. With both gangs escaping in the Mystery Machine, they both start kind of exchanging words, and basically the Digital Mystery Inc. gang doesn't really have one of those existential "Am I your real boy?" when encountering their doubles because they already know they're digital. They already know they're player characters in a video game. They just don't care. In fact, part of the reason why they're still on level 10, despite the fact that they know where the Scooby Snacks are, because they do, is because they don't see any reason to leave. There's a lot of fun stuff on this level. There's a diner, there's a lot of cool foods and games, and there's a theme park. They have fun here, and they see no reason to go after the Scooby Snacks, especially since, unlike the real gang, who will be able to leave the game if they find the Scooby Snacks, the digital gang will just be sent right back to the beginning. So, put simply, there's no reason to leave. They have fun here already, so they're not going to do anything. However, they do sympathize with the regular Mystery Inc. because they're still trapped in the game, and the Phantom virus is a threat to everybody. As such, real Fred proposes that both gangs briefly join forces, as he believes that with the 10 of them all together, they'll be able to take down the Phantom virus, which the digital Mystery Inc. readily agrees to, since they're still Mystery Inc. even if they're in digital form. The digital Mystery Inc. brings the group to the theme park. As it turns out, the box of Scooby Snacks on this level is in an arcade, specifically on an arcade machine that is, well, Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase. It's a game within a game. But as such, it seems like it'd just be a quick hop, skip, and a jump until they go further in and they find that they're not the only ones in the park, as they find the Phantom virus playing in a batting cage. And upon them realizing it's him, he starts shooting them with electrified baseballs. As such, they make a run for it, but it turns out, yeah, this level also has its fair share of enemies, which in this case are monsters that Mystery Inc. has faced in previous cases, which in this case are the Creeper, Jaguaro, Gator Ghoul, the Tar Monster, and Old Iron Face. Which, fun fact, when I first saw this movie, the only one of those monsters that I ever actually knew anything about was the Creeper. I had no idea who the other four guys were, though upon brushing up on Scooby-Doo history, yeah, they are actually monsters that the group has faced in the original Scooby-Doo Where Are You cartoon. So, Yeah, all four. So yeah, they encounter those 5 monsters, and unlike in the real world, these aren't guys in costumes. They are very much real, and they are working for the Phantom Virus. As such, to try and throw them off, both gangs end up splitting up, with essentially everyone going with their digital double, which also leads to again some nice little hijinks as we see both gangs exploring the theme park. We see the Shaggies, we see the Shaggies pretty much messing with a tar monster. We see the Freds riding on a roller coaster to get away from Gator Ghoul. We see the Daphnes exploring a haunted house to get away from the Creeper. We see the Velmas going through a wax museum to get away from Old Iron Face. And we see the Scoobies messing with Jaguaro by putting him on a carousel and then putting it at full speed, which is, again, it's all fun stuff, and it eventually does lead into another chase montage as both gangs continue exploring the theme park and dealing with the monsters. And the music they use over it is a song called Double Double Joint, which doesn't have any lyrics to it, but it has a nice techno theme to it, which really does make it feel lax and cool and really nice, and it's something you can bob your head to, and I like listening to it. So again, I dig it. But either way, the end result of this is that everybody manages to lose their monsters and meet back up in front of the arcade. However, as everyone's kind of reorienting themselves, Shaggy notices that he has something in his pocket, and apparently he's had it in his pocket this whole time. It's the magnet that Professor Kaufman gave them. He just was so scared with all the antics going on that he forgot he had it. However, upon pulling the magnet out, something happens to the digital Mystery Inc. All of them freeze up and start kind of glitching where they stand. And yeah, the reason for this is because, well, they're made of electromagnetic particles like the Phantom Virus. And so just as the magnet would have an adverse effect on the virus, it also has an adverse effect on the digital gang. Which sadly means that while Mystery Inc. now has a means of fighting against the virus, that also means that they can't let their digital doppelgangers get caught in the crossfire, since just pulling the magnet out caused all 5 of them to freeze up. As such, while the gang is ready to go into the arcade, knowing the Phantom Virus is probably going to be there to try and bar their way, they tell their digital doubles to just stay outside and guard the entrance, which the digital Mystery Inc. isn't okay with, but they do comply. As such, the real Mystery Inc. goes into the arcade, and sure enough, just as their digital double said, the Scooby Snacks are right there on the Scooby-Doo arcade machine, and sure enough, the instant any of them get close, the Phantom Virus lets himself known, and immediately just brings the whole arcade to life, zapping at everything that he can, destroying arcade machines, causing things to fly all over the place, and while Fred at one point does try using the super magnet to try to disrupt the Phantom Virus's, magnetic field, again, he ends up screwing it up too, as he tries getting closer, he ends up slipping on a ski ball and ends up falling on his face, which causes him to lose his grip on the magnet and causing it to slide under an arcade machine. And when Fred tries to go and get it, the Phantom Virus brings the arcade machine to life and sends out all the wires inside to grab Fred and hold him in place. So yeah, it's just pretty much everything's going to hell in the arcade, and Mystery Inc. can't do anything to stop it. And anytime any of them try and get close to the Scooby Snacks, the virus zaps them away. The virus just zaps it away out of their grip. So, everything's going wrong, and the digital Mystery Inc. can tell immediately and want to go in and help, but they end up but the monsters that both gangs had dealt with earlier managed to catch up with them, so now they're trying to outpace them. However, in the midst of that chaos, Cyber Scooby manages to slip back into the arcade and tries to help Fred, but he's bound by wires. You can't just chew through them. However, Fred does realize that there's a benefit to having 2 Scoobies around, as he gives a plan to Cyber Scooby, who immediately manages to sneak over to where real Scooby is hiding, and, well, they begin relaying the plan. And the plan is, Cyber Scooby will distract the Phantom Virus, while regular Scooby goes to the Scooby Snacks, which, yeah, the Phantom Virus has no idea that there are 2 Scoobies in there right now, so it's a foolproof plan, and it works, and it goes on without a hitch. Cyber Scooby manages to get on the virus's nerves to the point where it directs all his attention at him, and meanwhile, real Scooby manages to sneak in behind him and grab the Scooby Snacks, with the Phantom Virus realizing that what Scooby has done, too little, too late, as he grabs the Scooby Snacks, and, well, everything goes to hell. And my theory of the virus pretty much giving it the partition of enemy gets further proven, as the instant Scooby grabs the snacks, all the baddies in the level just immediately vanish, including the virus, who just screams out in pain as his image starts distorted and starts glitching out before finally just fizzling away into nothing. So yeah, the Phantom Virus is dead, and the Mystery Inc. has managed to get the last box of Scooby snacks, with both Scooby sharing in its contents. Although at that point, that's all. That's all she wrote. They've managed to escape from they've made it through all 10 levels, so now it's time to leave. And while the digital Mystery Inc. tries to say, hey, maybe you could stay a little longer, we could, there's some cool food courts, the real Mystery Inc. says that they do need to go home, and so both Mystery Inc.'s part ways, saying goodbye, and digital Mystery Inc. waving off their real world counterparts as they're beamed out of the video game. It's actually pretty sweet and nice, and I like it. But yep, all's well that ends well. Mystery Inc. gets beamed back into the lab, no worse for wears. Well, physically. They might be dealing with some psychological scars, but that's not for something we're going to bring up on screen. But either way, yeah, all is said and done. The Phantom Virus is deleted, the Mystery Inc. is back in the real world, so everything's all good, right? Not really. For you see, there's still the lingering mystery of where the Phantom Virus came from, which is and of course, Mystery Inc. does have an idea of who's behind it all. Going back to the aforementioned clues, the Phantom Virus did show fingerprints of his original creator, specifically how he continued utilizing baseball terminology while in the game, even going so far as in the final level, welcoming the gang to the final level by saying they're in the major leagues, and even drawing a baseball diamond in the Coliseum on the second level. But the clincher for the gang was that in the final level, they found the Phantom Virus in a batting cage. And so as Eric thinks it over, it's like, well, I don't understand. Basically, from what I'm getting out of all these clues you're telling me is that the Phantom Virus had a thing for baseball. Yep, it turns out that Bill is the one behind the Phantom Virus, and what I love is that as the gang are recounting the clues, he just starts backing away from the door, and then when they realize it's him, they all look at him just trying to jimmy the knob, but not being unable to. So yeah, they end up chasing him throughout the lab and manage to knock him into some bookshelves, and, well, it allows Wembley to come in and arrest him. So, why did Bill do it? Why did Bill create the virus? Put simply, jealousy. Basically, while Eric and him are friends, Bill's been at this university for 2 years longer. And yet, when it came down to deciding which game would be presented with the laser, it was Eric's game that was chosen over Bill's. And the thing is, Bill prided himself on his game, at least a little bit. They don't actually say that he prides himself on it, but he clearly does think that his game is better. As at one point, while they're talking about how earlier in the movie, when they were talking about the virus came from the video game, it's like, well, there's no virus in my baseball game, and it's a lot more entertaining. So yeah, basically, Bill creating the Phantom Virus was his attempt to try and scare Eric off and try and get his game in the forefront. Which, yeah, even Professor Kaufman is disappointed by this. And yeah, Bill's also the one that transported the Mystery Inc. into cyberspace, as he believed that with them showing up, they might find enough clues to link Bill back to the virus, and so he decided to just dump him in cyberspace and let the monsters in there have at them. So, bit of an asshole in all that regard, but either way, he's lost. Wembley arrests him, and he's carted out of the room, saying he would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for those meddling kids. So yeah, all's well that ends well. And so the film ends with Mystery Inc. and Eric going to another diner, and Eric thanking them for getting rid of the virus, telling them lunch is on him. Though he does offer the gang one last little bit of an Easter egg, as he actually has managed to download the Scooby-Doo game onto his laptop, and he offers Scooby and Shaggy if they want to play it. Although when they pull it up, the image they're greeted to is the digital Mystery Inc. still waving at everyone goodbye. It's, again, pretty nice. Although Scooby decides to throw his digital counterpart a metaphorical bone as he takes the laptop and begins hacking it so he gives him a box of Scooby snacks. So, yeah, that's the end of the movie. Although there is a little thing after the credits as we see each member of Mystery Inc. talking about what was their favorite part of it, with Velma saying that she liked going through the prehistory with the woolly mammoths, Fred talking about how he liked being a Roman gladiator and all that jazz, Daphne talking about how she liked being in the Arctic, Shaggy saying that he liked playing games in the arcade, and Scooby saying his favorite part was the laser, which also apparently led to them having another encounter with Cyber Scooby as they brought him into the real world, so that's nice. But, yeah. That was Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase, and my thoughts on it? The film is fine. Again, going back at it now, I do kind of see through a little bit of the veneer in the movie, and it does allow me to see a little bit more of its flaws. Case in point, the biggest one of all, in my opinion, is the laser. The laser is a strange little plot device when you actually stop and think about it. Because, here's the thing! These this college professor and his two students managed to create a laser that has the power to transport real-world objects into cyberspace and vice versa. Basically, essentially allowing whoever has access to that laser untold creativity. Hell, going back to that little segment at the end of the movie where the gang talked about their favorite parts of Scooby-Doo and the cyber chase, but when Scooby and Shaggy are playing around with a laser, they just went to various websites and started undigitizing all these things for them, like burgers, desserts, actual deserts, and all that stuff. They basically were just doing whatever the hell they want with it. This thing has unlimited potential. All you have to do is just input whatever you want and the laser will bring it to life. That's fucking awesome. So I'm kind of thinking, and these guys are just doing this in college? Like, the most they want to do with this thing is submit it to a science fair. And to be fair, they're probably gonna win. Even Professor Kaufman said that the grand prize was $250,000, which, yeah, that laser will work. But it's just like, you could patent that shit and still make millions. Like, what the hell? Like, and the basis for why the place where they're dumping all their digital garbage is in a video game? I think, like, why? Why? Couldn't you just, like, dump everything into, like, a blank digital space or something? I feel like that would be a lot better, especially considering what happened with Mystery Inc., which, let's talk about that for a minute. So early in the movie, as Eric, Bill, and Kaufman were talking about how the laser worked, they were able to beam a box of Scooby snacks into cyberspace and then likewise bring it back out with a few strokes of a keyboard. So why can't they do that with Mystery Inc.? How is the game able to differentiate between regular old everyday objects that you can find around the house and real people? How does it make that distinction? Because it feels like a very big design flaw if, for whatever reason, if you transport real people into a video game, that they essentially get trapped there and only can escape by completing the game. That seems like a very very big flaw in your programming, which is probably why it's still in experimentation. But here's an even bigger thing. How do they know that's what happens with the laser? Because if they do know that leads to one of two outcomes, both of which are not good outcomes. The first outcome is this. One, they programmed that into the laser, which, in a way, I can kind of see the logic behind that if you plan to market this laser later, because, hey, you want to know what could be a good selling point? Digitize yourself into a video game! Actually experience the game over yourself! It's just that they never put in a back door. So I feel they never put in the back door and made it so that you have to, if you want to escape, you have to complete the game. So that, I think, could be, so in a way, I can kind of see the logic there, but at the same time, it makes experimentation a little off, is what I'm saying. But the second theory is that this is a design flaw, and they only learned about it after an accident in the lab, which means someone or something went into that video game and then possibly died there. So, that's not nice. That's not fun. And again, kind of going off of that, the amount of detail put into the digital world is a lot more extensive than should be used for a video game. I know video games do tend to require a lot of time and effort to be able to perfect. There's a lot that needs to go in, from level design to character interactions to voice acting, just a whole slew of stuff that needs to go in. But yet, when the gang go into the video game, it's like just stepping into another reality, and it fits everything. You can still get hurt. The gravity on the moon is the way you expect it to. The lion is just vicious. When they're in the prehistoric era and they're riding on woolly mammoths, apparently they smell like garbage, which means Eric had to program that in. And the thing is, Digital Mystery Inc. talks about how tasty the food is on the 10th level. That had to be programmed. Now, I can kind of understand the logic in that if you're basically using the game to dump objects. And of course, if they know they can throw real people in, then maybe they need to make the experience feel as real as possible. I just think that that's a lot more details than you need to put in to make this video game work. And kind of on another thing, there's a little nitpick I have as well. Eric said that the final level of the Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase game was so difficult that not even he has beaten it. Well, then I respond with, then why not just make the level a little easier? I understand that when you play a video game, the game has to get progressively harder as you go along. Because if it wasn't like that, then it wouldn't be fun. There wouldn't be any challenge in it. There has to be something you can fight against that tries to impede your progress. So, of course, things do need to get things do need to get progressively difficult as you travel through the video game. But by that exact same token, if the final level of your game is so hard that not even the creator of the game can make it through it without issue, then I just got one thing to say to you, my friends. You need to fix your game. You're clearly doing something wrong here. So I'm gonna give Eric some flack for that. I think that maybe if you're having issues with that, maybe tweak the game design just a little. Maybe the laser isn't the only thing you should be working on, my friend. You should be messing with this as well. So yeah, when I actually do sit back and watch the movie, there are some things technical-wise, especially with the plot device, in this case the laser, that does kind of get my goat a little. Because when you actually stop and think about it, this thing should not exist. Or at the very least, if it does exist, it really should be in a different place. Like, college professors making this shit in their lab with their students. Patent that shit, work out all the kinks, sell it for millions. I guarantee people are gonna buy it. So I think there's gonna be a problem. So I think there's gonna be some issues. Gonna be some issues there. If you can just work out the flaws with having people get trapped in the game, you will make a lot of money. Especially with having sentient AI NPCs in the game. The Digital Mystery Inc. were exactly like the originals and were fully aware they were in a digital world. So maybe just maybe try and work out the kinks and then sell that shit is all I'm saying. Also make it a little less dangerous, because the idea of real people being teleported into a game and actually getting hurt, I think that's a very good way to deter people from using your product Because, well, if I learned that I could get transported into the world of, say, I don't know, Kingdom Hearts, and have my body swallowed up by darkness just because I encounter a Heartless, at that point I think maybe, just maybe, I won't want to play that game like that. It's all I'm saying. And I think that if anyone else did that, it would lead to a lot of mental scarring if they managed to make it to the end of the game. So, work on that, so to speak. But, with all my nitpicks out of the way, I do think there's still enough in the film to make it enjoyable. Case in point, of course, let's talk about the titular baddie for this movie, the Phantom Virus. And I love the Phantom Virus as a monster because I'm not going to say it's as chilling as other ones, but it definitely is a creepy fucker. From its very first appearance, it pretty much just looks like, it has the design of a lightning bolt. Its fingers are all sharp. It doesn't even have feet. It just has points where everything goes down. Its design is full of jagged edges. Its head is slender. It looks like a lightning bolt, and its voice is just a nice hissing voice. Is a nice little hissing voice mixed with a digital synthesizer in there. It really does feel inhuman, and what I love is that they do give the Phantom Virus a personality. Case in point, he's just a sadistic monster. It's clear that he just loves messing with people. He loves laughing at their torment, loves screwing with them as they run in fear. He just likes causing mayhem and chaos and just seeing everyone get scared and terrified as he's just blowing everything up. And we see that throughout the movie, and it's actually pretty entertaining to see when in contrast with the other characters, like when he finds Scooby and Shaggy in the university cafeteria, he waits till both of them notice them before he attacks them. Like, first Scooby sees them, and he's just looming over them like, ah, and he does nothing, but he does nothing, but then when Shaggy notices him, that's when he tries zapping them. It's funny. It's actually legitimately funny. Plot. On top of that, as we see him continue going through the game, as we see him continuing to tend with the Mystery Inc. through the video game, you do see more of his sadistic side coming out, as he's clearly having fun being in the role of the bad guy. Like when he keeps using his game, like when he confronts them in the Coliseum, he says, "Welcome to level 2, game players, where things get a little tougher." Like, he's just clearly he puts on this faux faux game guy persona just to screw with everyone, even though it's clear he's trying to kill them. So I do find him legitimately creepy, and I love it. And it all comes down to his design, his personality, and of course his voice. So again, I dig it. I think that the Phantom Virus is a legitimately good villain. But what makes the movie, in my opinion, even better, it's when it's the gang traveling through the video game. While I can nitpick how the digital world should operate to hell and back, I'll give credit where it's due. The fact that the Mystery Inc. is trapped in the video game and each of the levels are so unique and diverse actually creates some legitimately interesting scenarios to see the gang get stuck in. Again, the first level they end up on is the moon, and I do find that'll be a little fun. Seeing them go through the gladiator arena, go through prehistory, and then go through a slew of other levels that we only get to see in montage form. It's nice, and it offers some, and it clearly allows the people behind the movie to get to kind of stretch their creative muscles and see what situations they can put Mystery Inc. in before without actually straying outside of what they know. Which I like that. It's nice. It's actually really fun. It essentially allows them to bend the rules, so to speak, of the situations they can put Mystery Inc. in. So I dig it. It's legitimately fun stuff, and I enjoy watching it. And it's my only real downside to that is, well, while we do get a lot of creative scenarios, we only really get to breeze through most of them. As after all, the only levels that we get to see, we actually get to explore in the story proper are the first 3 levels and the 10th level. The other 6 levels, unfortunately, are only shown to us in montage, which I love all the varied designs in all of them, as they're all pretty cool and interesting. The only downside is you don't get to explore them very often. They're just there in the montage, which I understand. If they showed all 10 levels in the movie, it would be a hell of a lot longer, so they kind of needed to breeze through them. But at the same time, it does feel like we're missing something when you see all these creative setups, and yet they're only there for like maybe a minute or like maybe a few seconds to a minute. So again, creative setups, but it would have been nice to see more of them. But I think what really sells me and made me love this movie as a kid is the third act. Specifically, when Mystery Inc. meets their digital counterparts in the game. Because that was a selling point for me. When it was advertised that this movie would feature that and have Mystery Inc. meeting their doubles in the game and how their doubles utilized their old designs, with the exception of Scooby and Shaggy's doubles, which were just kind of sort of redesigned, I thought it was cool. I love the idea of meeting different versions of yourself, which I've hopefully showcased in other vlogs that I've done that are not Scooby-Doo related. So the idea of having 2 versions of Mystery Inc. together interacting, I loved it. It was fun. And for the most part, it's genuinely cool to see the members of both Mystery Incs. just interacting with their doubles. And some case, there's no clashing it. There's no, like I said, there's no real sense of identity with the digital Mystery Inc. gang, because they know we're digital, we're player characters in this game, and if we go and get the box of Scooby Snacks, we're just gonna get reset all the way back to the first level. So in a way that feels like it could be a story opportunity that they just kind of forgot about, but quite frankly, I'm okay with them not tackling that. For one thing, this is Scooby-Doo, and while I may have just gone on a several minute rant about the logistics of utilizing a digital laser and how it kind of fits into the plot, at its core, it's just a kid's movie. This is not something that really needs to dive into deep philosophical questions about identity and being and so forth. You're here to watch a group of 20-something teenagers, which I know I just said 20-something teenagers, bear with me here, and just going all around solving mysteries. You're here to see 20-something teenagers solving mysteries alongside their talking Great Dane, they're just here for funsies. They're not here to they're not here to dive into those deep questions. They're just here to show some spooks and chills and have a fun time while doing it. And and for the most part, I think it still continues to do that when both the real gang and the digital gang meet up, because it leads to some good interactions as both gangs work off of each other. I love seeing the Shaggies and their combined gluttony and antics when put together. I love seeing the Scooby-Doos whimpering with each other. I like seeing both Freds just being assertive and trying to find find ways to work with each other. I like seeing the Dabneys both being vain and either criticizing or complimenting the other. I like seeing the Velmas just being adorkable as they're still the smartest ones of both of their groups and are still kind of analyzing things on a certain level. They both even have that my glasses gag, as while they're in the wax museum, they bump into each other and their glasses fall off, and they both unintentionally cause old Iron Face to fall into a vat of hot wax, which should kill him, but well, Scooby-Doo movie plus video game, and instead just encases him in a layer of wax, which keeps him in place for maybe a couple seconds before he starts breaking out. So either way, that's a fun time. That is legitimately a fun time, and overall, I think that seeing Mystery Inc. meeting up with their doubles, it's fun. I dig it, and it's fun. I dig it, and while they don't really go too deep into it, it's still just cool seeing the both versions of the gang meeting up and getting into the typical Scooby-Doo antics, running around a theme park, trying to outrun monsters, trying to outwit them, doing silly antics with one another. It's good stuff, and it's good stuff, and I can't get enough of it. I can't get enough of it. And however, if I have to give this movie one major complaint, it's that the mystery aspect of this whole movie, figuring out who created the Phantom Virus, that's kind of in the background of everything. Up until for the majority of the movie, the major threat that they're dealing with is stopping the Phantom Virus, trying to figure out how to trying to find a way to outwit him and beat him in different terrains and eventually take him down. That's what we're doing here. And while the movie still offers clues as to who the Phantom Virus is, ultimately the major conflict throughout it all is Mystery Inc. just trying to beat the virus and make it out of the video game in one piece. It isn't until after the gang gets out that they bring up the mystery again. For the most part, throughout the rest of the movie, it's just surviving, making it all the way through. So I guess in a way I can kind of consider that a flaw in the movie. But with that said, though, that's still a minor flaw. And like I said, there's still a lot more of this movie to enjoy. And this is another little compliment that I will give to the movie. This is the first one of the Scooby-Doo films that was made that was animated digitally, and it shows. While they utilize the same designs and voice actors from the previous three movies, well, with the exception of Zombie Island, because Billy West voiced Shaggy there, and then they changed it up in the other movies. Basically, this is the first film where they utilize digital technology to animate the movie, and you can tell right away. It doesn't take away from the movie, but it does make it look a little cleaner and nicer. But I think the primary reason they did this was because, well, the digital world. They clearly have a little fun with playing with the technology when the gang is in the virtual world, because they keep throwing up 3D wireframes whenever they transition between levels. 3D wireframes to show the level being built around them or even in the sky, which it looks cool, but it also does feel like they're kind of showing off the fact that, look, we're digital now. So it's a little weird, but overall it works. I think it does work for the film. So I guess, really, what else is there I can talk about in the movie? Well, overall, I do still find it enjoyable. Again, it does have some things that if you stop and think about, don't really feel like they fit into the grander picture, but there is still a lot to like. We still get the typical Scooby-Doo antics with Mystery Inc. as they chase down the virus. The amount of creative scenarios we get from the premise of them being trapped in a video game is legitimately nice, and I dig it, and it's cool seeing them continue exploring it. The Phantom Virus, I think, is honestly a pretty good villain, with both design-wise, voice-wise, and in terms of threat level, because even early in the movie, Professor Kaufman says that if the Phantom Virus ever left the campus, he could probably take over the world, considering how dependent we all are on technology. And again, the third act is probably my favorite part of the movie. Seeing both versions of Mystery Inc. meeting up and working alongside each other, it's nice, it's fun, and even in the end, when both have a heartfelt goodbye, it's nice, it's sweet, I dig it. Though again, I feel like that Mystery Inc. should be dealing with a little bit of PTSD, considering that they were trapped in a video game that nearly killed them on quite a few occasions. But then again, they hunt monsters all the time, and the previous three movies involved them going up against zombies, witches, and aliens. So, maybe that's toughened them up. I don't know. I don't care. Point is, while I do believe that Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase is not the best of the four movies I've looked at for this October, I do still think it's enjoyable in its own right, and if you just kind of sit back and let yourself enjoy the creativity of the whole thing, I think you will have a good time, and I think you'll have a good time and still find yourself coming back to it. So yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. I I hope you enjoyed me talking about this movie, and I hope you enjoyed the Spooky-Doo retrospectives. While I am gonna be I'm not gonna be doing any more of these for this year, and I don't plan to look at them for next year, as I already have gotten my selection for next year's Halloween picks all set up. But, well, I do hope to one day come back to these vlogs and talk about more Scooby-Doo projects, because there's a lot. There's quite a few stuff that I like to talk about. There's the live-action movies. There's some of the older movies starring Scooby, Shaggy, and, yes, Scrappy-Doo, which, yes, I know people don't like Scrappy, but there are still some gems in there which I think are worth looking at. There are plenty of other animated Scooby-Doo projects to look at. There are animated shorts to look at. Scooby-Doo crossovers that I could do vlogs on. There's plenty of good Scooby-Doo material that I can look at. And, well, or hell, maybe I can look at some of the bad Scooby-Doo stuff, because they do exist. Return to Zombie Island. So I do hope to one day return to the Spooky-Doo retrospectives. I'm not gonna have it be next year, and it might not even be the year after that, because how I typically decide what I look at for my Halloween vlogs is done through a poll on Twitter. But I will still be doing my vlog. But I do hope to one day return to the Spooky-Doo retrospectives, and if all of you are so inclined, I hope you return on that day as well. But either way, I hope you enjoyed these videos this year. I hope you continue enjoying the spooky season. And if you're so inclined, you can go and check out some of my other vlogs. Like I said, my main Friday vlog, I typically look at Steven Universe, which I got a few more weeks of that left to look at, so keep on the lookout, especially since in a few weeks from now, I'm going to be looking at the Marvels for my MCU vlogs. And I'm also doing a side vlog focusing on the various Spider-Verse comics that were printed. At the time that I'm doing this vlog, I'm currently going through all the Spider-Gwen tie-ins to Spider-Geddon. So if you're interested in those, go ahead and check them out. But if you're only here for Scooby-Doo, I thank you for watching all these videos, even if it was just for like maybe a few minutes. I hope you come back next year when we look at next year's Halloween picks, and hopefully one day in the future I will continue talking about Scooby-Doo. So till then, I hope you have a good Sunday. Stay safe, and of course, I hope you have a happy Halloween.